Hey, yeah, what? Grab your bootstraps. Yeah, let's scale your growth. Here's the truth, Jack. We'll reach the globe, unveil the
Tanya,
notes.
what
Learn
the
to pivot,
fuck?
earn your digits. Won't burn, you'll get it. See, this is factual. Funds will show. Learn to flow with candid capital.
This is a Candid Capital interview. In these episodes, we host industry business professionals involved in the global tech ecosystem to discuss various topics related to tech, global economy, and building sustainable businesses and investments.
Welcome back to the Candid Capital podcast. I'm your host, Josh. In this episode, the topic is sustainable transportation with the CEO of NAD Capital, Monika Mikac. We will discuss sustainable mobility, EVs, and tech in the transportation industry from Monika's experience working and investing with entrepreneurs and startups over the past decade in the space. Hi, Monika. Thanks
Josh.
for doing the Thanks for doing the podcast with me today. So we're going to talk about sustainable transportation and whatever else comes up out of that. So what I like to start with is the origin story. So how did you get into tech, investment, all that kind of stuff?
I studied actually journalism and public relations, so it's not really connected to the technology side. But I somehow started this career thinking that I'm going to do really, investigative journalism. I'm going to do noble things. I'm going to educate the people. And then so I realized that journalism is not, in majority of the cases, it's not really what you want and what you dream when you're starting to study journalism. So I was really looking for a shift in my career. And back in 2010, I met Mate Rimac, who was at that point, in his garage building electric car. I met the small team at that point. It was only him, Igor, who was afterwards leading the production, and Adriano Mudri, who was doing a design, but he was not really actively involved every day. And I really liked what they are doing. And at that point, it became a bit serious because they got a first offer from the investor, and they invited me to join the team. So for me, it was no brainer. I immediately said, okay, I was looking a way out from a journalism because it was not what I was planning to be. So let's try it. I didn't know anything about electric cars. I didn't know much about the technology. For me at that point, cars were just a matter of transportation from point A to point B, and that's it. But I'm a curious person. I like to learn new things. And I really liked everything that they were doing. I was starting to assemble the batteries in the garage. I was starting to learn about electric cars. Everything was really fun for me. And I think that majority of us at that point in the project, we didn't really know what it will take for the company to become successful, what kind of troubles and what kind of ups and downs we are going to have to make Rimac Automobili a successful story in the end. And I think that was good because probably, we were not put in some sort of boxes and we didn't see limitations. We only saw the opportunities and we were chasing those opportunities. At the end, I really fall in love with electric vehicles, I would say, supercars in general. I learned quite a lot about supercars. I learned quite a lot about electric vehicle technology. And I started to appreciate all of the effort that supercar manufacturers are putting into making those, cars that we are all dreaming about. And also when it comes to electric cars, how much of effort and change there has to happen, because at that point when we were starting, not many OEMs were really thinking about, going electric. Tesla was making that push. Tesla was making that push on a high level, but other OEMs were not really thinking about it so much at that point. It was a lot of challenging points in the life of the Rimac where we were not sure, how we are going to finance ourselves, what is going to happen, how things are going to go. But we made it with a lot of ups and downs. We made it, and at the point when Porsche was coming to the company, and company was already 400 people, I decided it's time for a change in my career. And honestly, I first wanted to take a bit of a break because it was like really exhausting 8 years in Rimac Automobili. First 3 years, not a single day of vacation. A lot of learning, a lot of changing yourself to be successful. And I wanted to take a break, but I met the team of QEV Technologies, and they were doing something. They were involved in a segment of supercars with a racing segment and with building supercar for other clients, but they had a vision of this electric mass market transportation, and this is something where I saw like, okay, this is something next big thing. And in the end, on Friday, I stopped working in Rimac. On Monday, I was in QEV Technologies. From that point, I started to learn more shifting to this mass market mobility, what is going to happen, how it's going to develop in the future, following all of the new trends. And somehow, naturally, 2022, beginning of 2022, I decided for another shift in my career, and I decided to take over a position as a CEO in NAD Capital. And we are solely investing in anything that is related to electric mobility technology. So somehow I was staying, in my segment. And this is something that really motivated me to stay connected to the industry, because I fall in love with the industry and I fall in love with the technology and all of the new developments. So I really wanted to stay connected. But I switched a bit more to the investment side and looking at it more from the investment perspective of this new mobility and the new technologies.
So are you a Formula One fan by chance?
Maybe I should say Formula E. but yes, I like also Formula One and Formula E. Both of them have, like, I would say, advantages, differences, and both of them are quite exciting. I need to admit that I've never been to Formula One race itself. I have been to, there are some kind of trainings that you have a couple of days before the Formula One. So I have been to some of those trainings and, on the racetrack, checking, all of the teams and everything they're doing, but I haven't been to the race day of the Formula One itself. While on the Formula E, for the first season of the Formula E, when everything was just starting, Rimac was a race director car. And I have been, I think, almost to every race of the Formula E. So Formula E, probably I know much better than the Formula One, but I like both.
I mean, I don't know too much about it myself, but I do recall like, I think it was like 4 years ago, they had a Formula One car at Mobile World Congress. And like the amount of technology that was in there, I was just like, I had no idea. I just thought it was a better engine. like I had no idea how much data they were using, how much like communication tools that were like inside of the vehicle itself. And I just thought
that the budget usually for the Formula One team is around 100 million euros per season. So obviously, they need to spend that money on the technology. And I think that with every racing, the goal is actually to develop new technologies that later on can be used in more mass market application, because racing is a really stressful environment and it really pressures you in a short time to develop new technologies. Like, for example, QEV was leading Formula E team of the first season, and they won the championship of the first season. And there is a lot of work, it's not just training the drivers, especially with electric vehicles, with Formula E. It's completely switching the mindset of the driver, because they need to take care how much battery they are using, how do they optimize. They cannot push too much, they need to balance. So that's like really hard when you're talking to like a race driver. Okay, how to because the goal of the Formula E was also eventually to develop the technologies that are later on going to be used in regular mass market cars. But drivers need to adapt to the new technologies. And there is, as you mentioned, a lot of different small bits and pieces that have to be developed, both for the Formula One and for the Formula E. So software that you're using, For example, in QEV, company was developing completely all of the electric control units for the vehicle. And optimizing electric control unit can bring you a couple of seconds more or less, depending on if you did a good job or not.
So you've test driven a lot of these, e-cars, then I'm guessing?
I have driven quite a lot of electric cars. I have driven quite a lot of regular supercars, I would
Oh,
say, just
oh,
to feel the comparison. I haven't driven the Formula One or Formula E vehicle. It's not that easy. I have sit inside, and it's not something really comfortable. It's not just like a regular car that you enter. It's really low. You're almost laying down on the floor. It's really tight. You have to squeeze inside, and usually even the chair is made. The chair is not the proper chair, but it's like the seat that is made out of foam, and it's made like according to each driver. So they made it custom for you. So when you sit into somebody else, it's not really, it's not comfortable. It's not made for you.
Yeah, I know we have like a racetrack around here, and it's it's not just a plain circle. It's like landscapes and whatnot that you can go to and rent certain types of fast cars to go on. I haven't tried it myself, but it sounds really interesting. And then again, one of the conferences I was at this past week, Segway 9 was there, or Segway 9 bot or something like that, and they had this like super cool looking like motorcycle, and all I could think about was Tron, the movie, because it had those like really fat tires. I think it was just a concept vehicle. I don't think you can, a lot of times at these trade shows, it's
In
concept
majority
vehicles.
of the cases, when you're going to the auto shows or any kind of conferences where you have exhibited certain vehicles, in majority of the cases you have like show cars or prototypes, and sometimes they're all just like visions for the future. And then when the product comes to a production ready vehicle, it's usually not the same as we expected.
Well, I mean, the technology, it's definitely a concept vehicle because it was a hybrid hydrogen and electric vehicle. And so I'm pretty sure there's a lot of work to be done on the hydrogen component. So I'm fairly certain it's just a concept car.
But hydrogen is not so far. So just inside the NAD as QEV company in portfolio, they are developing hydrogen platform for electric buses. And it's not so far away as you think. There is already a working platform for hydrogen bus inside QEV. The question, of course, with the hydrogen is more of how do you store hydrogen? Where do you charge those vehicles with the hydrogen? So I think that's more of a challenge than developing the hydrogen powertrain itself. So that and you always have, of course, you always have a battery, because in the end, you're running on electric motor, and hydrogen is just charging the battery.
Yeah, I mean
Except if there is some different concept, and then maybe they are developing something else. So I'm not sure exactly what you have seen.
Well, I mean, again, it's the same issue that I would say Tesla had before. They had to build out their own infrastructure network for charging and all that stuff, because the world, at least in North America, is really built for carbon or petrol. But I think we probably will see it in Asia first, because it's a smaller place. Japan has been into that for a while. Same with Toyota, and I think they have a more motivation to do it because they don't have any energy production other than like nuclear and some renewables, but they don't have anything that they can mine for energy.
From my perspective, I see hydrogen as a great solution, not for all of the people, but more for, let's say, heavy-duty vehicles, trucks, or maybe buses that are doing long distances. For this kind of application, I see hydrogen as a perfect solution, because in those cases, you don't need to build like really big charging infrastructure. Because, for example, with the bus, you know exactly where the bus needs to stop. You know exactly the route of the bus. So you can really easily predict, where to install the charging points and what to do. So in that regards, I see that, with the hydrogen, this might be the first thing to put the shift to hydrogen. But I don't see it so much in the like personal cars. I don't see that we are going to have mass market personal vehicles with hydrogen powertrain.
I mean, I think there's going to be a mix of different things, and it's not all going to switch overnight. And I don't really see it as being one, but there are other motivations as well for it, other than the technology itself. There's definitely political motivation for some places, resource plays. There's also, you could call it the legacy industry, which is kind of looking at this as a way that they don't really lose what they were doing before, but they can do it with something cleaner, type of perspective. But I mean, again, I think we have to really localize to each market, because different countries, different things make sense. Um, you know, just like I see like so many more electric vehicles in, say, like more dense populated cities. Like, for example, traveling throughout Latin America, I see a lot more of those electric vehicles showing up there versus what I see here, for example. Um,
I agree perfectly with you that it's something that is depending of each region, and it's different for each region. Um, I noticed from in NAD we have portfolio companies, on all of the continents almost. So we are not really focused on specific area. So we are investing in new technologies wherever they might occur that we think it's a great fit for the portfolio. It's really important for us that all of the portfolio companies can somehow benefit from each other, so that they can work together and can grow together. So either a new company that we are accepting being a supplier to already existing companies, or maybe using already existing companies that's supplier for them. So somehow we want to see that fit. And that's like the main motivation. But for example, we have one company that we invested in Philippines. It's called Get. And I'm not sure, have you ever been to Philippines?
no, I haven't gone past the market analysis of the Philippines. That's like the extent of
So
it.
so it's quite unique. When you're going to Philippines, they have 300,000 jeepneys that are main way of transportation for majority of the people over there. And those jeepneys, how actually those jeepneys came to life, after World War II, American Army left a lot of jeeps over there, and Filipinos took those jeeps, cut them in half, prolonged the wheelbase, and made minibuses. Afterwards, it became so popular, they started producing those jeepneys, and that's where the name obviously is coming from. But those jeepneys are polluting heavily. If you're walking on the streets of Manila, um, pollution is like you cannot breathe on the street, because it's so heavy pollution from those jeepneys, and majority of the people are using those jeepneys as a main way of transportation. And Get is company that is considered like Uber of e-bus business. And they started a new business model where they created electric minibus that is replacing actually those jeepneys. So a bit of modernized vehicle that has air conditioning, because in jeepneys you don't have air conditioning, you don't even have a proper windows. So really changing, the way how people commute over there. Vehicle is still what is important to be really affordable when it comes to pricing. Of course, obviously, in those kind of markets, the price tag is really important. But unique is that, even if you're going to those emerging markets, the thing that you can notice that everybody has a cell phone. So it's great if you're having this application and they can buy the ticket on the cell phone, and they can check out where the new bus is coming, where is it driving them. So all those kind of things. But what I wanted to point out actually with Philippines, this is the way to go for electrification for them. I think over there it's not so much important if we are talking about personal vehicles becoming electric, but this mass market transportation, this is something that is crucial if they want to fix their environment, if they want to, get the lower rate of pollution, and if they want to change something. This is something that is crucial. And in a lot of emerging markets, this is the similar case.
Yeah, I mean, talking about smartphone apps in emerging markets, I heard of this transportation app that I just never even considered it because it's not a thing in Canada. But in some of these places, they actually track how often a bus has been robbed or how safe it is and the route and all that stuff. And I had no idea until I ran into somebody that was in Brazil, and they were explaining like this is like a thing that they have because if they miss the bus, they cannot they can't wait at the stop for the bus because it might not be like a safe place, which I thought was it's just cool to hear different things that people are using in different places because it's not something that we even think about here. I think.
Yeah, in Philippines, for example, there is a really big problem with harassment of women on those jeepneys, because jeepneys you sit like really squeezed tight, and it's really hard then for ladies that are driving inside, and get experience that majority of the people riding in their buses are women. Because they feel more comfortable, they feel more safe. And another unique thing about those applications and this tracking is that you can actually really have a lot of data. You gather all of the data of your passengers. You know exactly at each moment who is driving your bus. And imagine this from a marketing perspective. Obviously you have screens in the bus. You can show commercials, but you can really show targeted commercial. If you know that at this point 90% of your passengers are women in between 30 and 40, so you can really push for the targeted marketing. You know exactly after many kilometers being driven, then you know exactly at which timing you want to position what of the marketing materials. So I think those are some of the unique things that maybe we are not following, because I guess, at least from my perspective, being in Europe, this is not something that is important. You either drive the car or you take a taxi, or maybe you're going to take a bus, but you don't really care who is driving in your bus because you feel comfortable, you feel safe, and it's not important for you.
Well, like in the city that I'm in, we have an autonomous vehicle test track. And so toying with different ideas of different corporates that are involved in it. And I remember the last tour I went on is the vision at the time, I'm sure it's changed now, but was really that the vehicle and the driving part is just a small piece of it. It's like when you're inside, what ads, of course, they want to do advertising. They want to provide Wi-Fi. And they want to provide all these different data points that you can interact with in there. The real question is along privacy, as at least here, as to what data does the car transportation company own while you're in the vehicle. And so this was like the concept idea behind it, because it was a government-funded project. So, they were looking at a very, I'd say, not cost-effective way of turning the city into autonomous, because they were looking at it from building all these infrastructure sensor sites along all the roads, as opposed to just making a smarter car.
I think in general, the AI and everything that is going to bring, it's really a question. How do we balance all of that? How do we keep privacy, but use the best of what AI is bringing? how the data is being stored, how the data is being analyzed. Because also, like gathering a lot of data doesn't mean anything if you don't store it properly so you can use it afterwards. So there are a lot of challenges with AI in different segments, not only in transportation. I think, we probably just scratched the surface of everything that is going to happen in the future. And you mentioned thing about autonomous. I think that's like probably the main question: how mobility is going to develop in the future? What kind of changes are we going to experience? I think that the question, are cars going to be electric? That's already decided. That for me, that's it. That's no brainer. But the way how we use mobility, I believe it's going to change drastically in the future. And maybe what we are experiencing right now with autonomous vehicles is that, okay, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in the next 2 years. Maybe it's going to take a bit longer that we really see a lot of different cities having autonomous vehicles. And I think the biggest issue with autonomous vehicles actually is how do they operate in the same area with cars that you have that are operated by people. Because if you have only a closed area where you operate autonomous cars, it's much more easier than if you just let them in the regular environment.
Where I see it for where I'm at is they're going to start by making autonomous lanes. That's likely where they're going to start. They're going to create areas where it's just autonomous until we phase out more of we'll say the analog vehicles. The other thing is it's demographic shifts. We're an older, I'd say an older country with a large segment of the population who really like driving in their own cars, won't be driving in the not too distant future. And they track all this by driver's licenses every year over year, and it's been going down.
Similar in Europe. Young people don't want to drive anymore. They use Uber. They use public transportation, whatever, just to bring them to the point A, point B, and that's it, And that's why we definitely will experience a shift. Because in reality, why do you need car? 90% of that car is parked somewhere in front of your driveway, in your garage, somewhere. And, you only use it for, if even 10%. I know this from my experience that if I'm not using really car so much anymore. I have a home office, and I use my car just like to drive my daughter to the activities. That's it. That's the only thing, I use my car for. And then you have a couple of occasions where you want to go somewhere over the weekend, but if there was an easy solution for me to rent a car just like over the weekend over the app, I would definitely use it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And, especially if you're in urban areas, the need for it. And, it also comes down to, city design as well. I know like for us, our cities are very large and spread out. Like you pretty much need a car. Like our public transportation system, yes, we have buses and metros and whatnot, but for the most part, the way our cities are currently designed, it's not like Europe where you can just walk everywhere in a lot of those cities pretty easily. So I think it'll be a while if we end up doing that at all. It's just with our land, everything's so far apart, and our cities are not built up; they're built out. And so, I mean, it's hard to say how it'll shake out. For us, I think if anything, it'll be much later because, like I said, as the demographics shift, I don't see us replacing a lot of the people that won't be here in 20 years at a fast enough rate. So our cities might actually contract. It's possible. NAD Capital. So if you can, how large is the fund?
So the fund was started actually as a private investment vehicle of Frank Kanayet. He is an entrepreneur from Colombia. made his wealth in oil and gas sector, and then he said, "Okay, I'm going to repay the debt to the environment, and I'm going to invest in electric vehicles." He was the first investor in Formula E. He was the first investor in Rimac Automobili. He was one of the first investors in QEV Technologies. So he really noticed, the companies that have potential at very early stage, while projects were really small, with a couple of people on board.
Have you been to Colombia?
No, honestly, I haven't been. It's on my list because we also have part of our offices in Colombia. So I need to go for the business reasons, but somehow it was never an opportunity until now. So
So I was just there recently. I was there for roughly a month. Fantastic.
okay,
I should be on the tourism board of like
of
Colombia.
Colombia.
I've just been telling everybody how awesome it is. It was not what I was expecting.
Have you been to Bogota?
Yes, that's where I started. Is that where the office is?
Yes, the offices are in Bogota, so that's the plan, to go to Bogota.
Yeah, so like Bogota, I was just blown away. They have fantastic restaurants. And I lucked out and I met a foodie who gave me so many recommendations for so many local places in Bogota. And it was fantastic. The neighborhoods I was in, it just wasn't what I was expecting. And I spent most of my time in between Bogota and Medellin. Different places for sure. But it is definitely fantastic. I'm probably going to go back in a few months, see what business opportunities might be there. I didn't get a chance to see the tech ecosystem there, but I got to experience the tech that they have because everything's on the phone. So many delivery, like everything's delivery. There's nothing you can't get delivered. And there's nothing you can't get a service of in your home, it seemed like just everywhere. It was amazing. And so many different types of transportation services too. So they do have Uber and they have I think Cabify and a bunch of others. And then there's another one which you bid on what you want to pay. So wherever you want to go, it's like, if you take me here, I'm willing to pay $10. And then like the app will tell you if you bid too low or too high, and you can make like an adjustment if you want. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting for sure.
Cool. I need to try all of that. Frank is also he was part of the Shark Tank Colombia. So during that, he invested in 20 different projects in Colombia as part of the Shark Tank program. And those are not, related to electric mobility only. So somehow there is a split of everything that is related to electric mobility stays in NAD Capital, and the rest he is running through another venture he has in Colombia.
Okay, so he has a separate venture fund in Colombia, or he just does like angel investing?
Yes, so there is a Verder Capital that is handling all of those investments he did as part of the Shark Tank Colombia. I think more than 20 investments in various different segments. And then another vehicle that I'm running at the moment, NAD Capital, that invests solely into electric mobility projects. Anything, we like to say that we are like a charging station for electric mobility projects. We cover, from the charging points to powertrains, production of electric vehicles itself, even what do you do with batteries after they run out of life in the vehicles, so second life batteries. So basically closing the whole circle of electric mobility technology. That's part of the NAD, and that's the goal of NAD.
Is there a particular stage that you focus on?
Yes, so we are investing in very early stage. The maximum ticket we would do would be up to 1 million euros. But if the companies perform well, then we might do even bigger tickets at a later stage. So, if we already have a company in portfolio, we are really happy with the progress and how everything is going with the company, we might do a participation in the following rounds.
Okay, and how large is the portfolio now?
In total, we invested 40 million euros into different projects. And the plan is to grow the fund. We are actually not structured like a classic fund, so the GP LP structure. We are a UK LLP, and that's the structure as an investment vehicle, because as I mentioned, it was all started as a private investment of Frank, and then it more grew up to, let's say, friends and family investment office. And now we are getting it more on a big professional level, and having more investors joining us that are not just friends and family.
So does that mean you have 40 investments, or like of the different projects that you said?
No, because we have around 10 investments.
Okay.
It was actually one additional, but that one we sold out. So 10 investments, but as I mentioned, okay, the first ticket would be 1 million, but we then tend to follow up some of the investments and do additional rounds.
Yeah, cool. And so you said this is all for sustainable transport or mobility. This is the focus of the investments. So anything related to
from
that?
racing side, when we spoke about the Formula E, to production of electric vehicle technology inside of Rimac, because Rimac is not only supercars, but it's also a technology part, and that's actually the highest growing segment of Rimac business, supplying technology to the other clients in the automotive industry. QEV technologies, which is in from racing side, QEV is actually leader when it comes to electric racing. They are the only company in the world that is active in every electric racing series that exists currently. But for them, racing is just like development platform for new technologies and marketing, good marketing. But the main business is actually production of electric vans and platforms for electric buses. Then another company that we have in portfolio is EV Dynamics, and they are a pioneer of electric buses based in Hong Kong, production facilities in China. I mentioned also Get, who is in public transportation of Philippines, but we saw that this business model could be easily replicated in Malaysia, Vietnam, many other emerging markets in Asia. And there were already some of the discussions. Even there was some of the discussion for Get product and application in African countries, because it could be, similar transport they are using currently in African countries that could be replaced with those comets that Get is having as vehicles.
Do you also invest in battery recycling technology as well?
Yes. So closing the loop, we have one of the portfolio companies that is a startup focusing on second life batteries. So what happens usually after 10 years of being used in the vehicles, batteries need to be replaced. But in majority of the case, those batteries are at 80% of their capacity. So they could still have a second life application instead of completely recycling them. And this second life application can be for energy storage, or it could be even for low voltage electric powertrains. So it could have multiple applications and usages. And the company that we invested actually develops quite innovative system of checking what is the status of those batteries, because with second life batteries you have a lot of manual work. Let's say, for example, you take the battery of the Tesla or Nissan, you disassemble the modules, you take the modules and then you connect them and you created the storage system. But then you realize that maybe one module of your battery is at 60% capacity while others are at 80% capacity. And the issue is that your battery is going to be strong as the weakest link that you have in the battery. So in that sense, what company is doing really innovative is the system where you can just do plug and play of different modules and analyzing all of the readings of the module and then sorting them. Okay, 80% capacity, 70, 60, those one are just for recycling. So we believe that really this is something that a lot of companies will have to tackle in the future. How are they doing it, and what do they do? Because we are going to have more and more electric vehicles on the road, and this means more and more batteries to be recycled or reused in the end. Like there is prediction that 2030 there is going to be 6 million battery packs already retiring from electric cars.
So I think the recycling component is really important, at least for getting it to be sustainable. One of the roundtables I was on was with someone from Bosch, and he was saying that China is very close to being able to recycle batteries cheaper than mining the stuff to make new batteries. And so it's just time. It seems is where we're at. But I mean, whoever's doing that at scale first, I think is in a really good position for that.
But I think it's going to have to be probably a bit decentralized, because the issue also that you have with the batteries is the transportation. So it's not so easy to transport the batteries. Even with the new batteries, if you want to transport them, you need to have a lot of certificates, to be able to transport the battery. So in that sense, I don't believe that we are going to have like one place where we send all of the batteries for recycle. I think it's going to have to be decentralized, and probably each country is going to need to have some kind of solution for either second life or recycling. So the whole circle probably is going to have to be closed in each country.
Absolutely. I mean, decentralized makes sense for a lot of different industries. I was just thinking in terms of, the company that comes up with this process and ability to do it, and then they can build their refurbishing plants in the different regions as needed.
Yeah, definitely. That's an idea also of the startup that we have, and the goal is that they are able to this system where you just plug those batteries and do the readings. So basically, this is what you're selling, and you can sell that easily or set up, or you can sell it to some other company in the US, Canada, any other country, or you can set up your own facility in another place and do similar thing that you're doing in Europe.
For sure. And I mean, we're putting a lot of money into setting up different parts of the value chain for electric here as well. Do you invest in any other types of transportation systems like drones, or I have to say
we are evaluating some of the not really invest in drones, but we are evaluating some of the projects that are focused on what is going to happen with airplanes, how this shift is going to happen to electric hydrogen. Maybe just recently you have seen the news that the first hydrogen powered airplane have been tested and did the first flight. So that's something that is quite interesting.
I'll do the 100th or 1000th flight.
You don't want to do the first one.
Absolutely not. But the UAE, I think, is launching their drone transportation service for people. Like, I think it's a 4-seater or something like that. So that's just what I was thinking, because I mean, yes, they always bring that out in trade shows, but it seems like that
I'm
is
not
going
sure.
to be
I'm not really sure how soon this is going to come to something that is going to be mass market. There are a lot of different challenges. I'm not talking so much about tech challenges. Challenges, of course, exist, especially if we are talking about those products being electric. And then
Oh,
from a perspective of,
there's huge regulatory problems with
yes,
that.
that's
Air
the
traffic
biggest issue.
control. This is why I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it'll be launched as an individual can buy these things. I think it's going to be, certain cities will have specific services like an Uber for you to use because it's going to need to be controlled.
And
And
probably
also,
really controlled route where you're driving,
yeah,
because you cannot get off the route.
absolutely. And I mean, the other thing is it's going to probably be very government involved because who wants to take the risk of it falling on a playground? Like if you have a crash of one of these things, it's going to be terrible. So,
And it can happen. It's, and it will happen in the end, because it's always something can go wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
like with airplanes, even now, they are crashing. Not so frequently, of course, but they are crashing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be again, I think it's going to be a service. I think it's going to be very specific routes, highly regulated, and probably tied to some sort of public transportation offering from governments. I think it's the only way at this point that you'd be able to do it safe enough and reliable enough, especially for it to even work.
Yeah, we are following that segment closely, but honestly, so far we didn't do any investment, just because all of those tricky things that you mentioned and the regulation, and we don't see that this is something that is going to happen quickly. I think the transition is going to be long. What I think from my perspective that might happen maybe quicker is having some of the smaller airplanes being electric. So there are some interesting concepts being developed in that segment where, you have smaller electric planes that are being developed that could potentially offer then quite affordable transportation to people in, like, for example, in Europe, that could work easily, that maybe you can, visit a couple of countries around you with these smaller planes. So maybe, from a perspective of planes going electric, this could make sense. We are following closely, but so far we didn't decide to do any investments on that side.
So I'm very, very skeptical cynical maybe is the right word, on the Hyperloop. I feel like it's the monorail from Simpsons. And so what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it's just an ad smokescreen for a futuristic possibility? Do you really think it's going to happen?
In theory, it could work, but I think it requires quite a lot of investment. And I'm not sure, who is going to be at the end the first one to really push it through and make it like...
Because the two major projects that were supposed to be done by now have gone nowhere, really. And there was supposed to be one in the UAE, because who could pay for it? And there's also supposed to be one from Mumbai to Pune in India. And neither one of those took off.
Worked out.
Yeah.
But there is still, a lot of trials of doing it in Italy, in some other countries, and things are still rolling. So it's not completely forgotten.
And Simpsons, the monorail. The guy's already convinced everybody to move to the next town. So, I would say the coolest thing that I've seen lately that is related to transportation, I can't remember where I saw the article. I think it was TechCrunch, but was in rockets. And they had a way to launch a rocket without fuel and without having to put it on top of a plane. And it was some sort of vertical launch. And I think it's called centrifuge. And it creates some sort of, I don't know, it causes it to rotate like this, and it kind of looks like a drill going throughout. I thought that was like the coolest thing that I've seen.
But does it really work? So it's like fully functional prototype, or what's the stage, or just the idea? We want to do that, and who knows if it's going to work.
I think it's probably at the Hyperloop stage. But it was a European one, but it seemed really cool. Whatever it was, it's just kind of like when Elon got started with his rockets. It was more about the animations. You'd watch the animations of it going up, coming down, landing, but it wasn't doing that. And then 8 years later. so, so I mean, we'll see how that goes. I have no idea.
I believe with those new technologies that people are sometimes underestimating how long it's going to really take to have it done. I'm not sure. One of the cool things that I have seen just recently is about Saudi Arabia and the city that they're planning to build, Noam, on this line that is like 170 kilometers line, and all of those buildings that look like almost like mirrors that are reflecting each other. And I don't know how many million of people being able to live in that. And they are planning the huge investment. We are talking about like trillions of investment into building this. So this is something like quite innovative, and with all the autonomous vehicles they're planning to have over there and all the different things. So this is something that was like, okay, mind-blowing when you see it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few of these sort of like engineered from the ground up new cities designed to be cities of the future. There's like one on each continent. The thing is, with most cities, it needs to have an anchor of something in that area in order for it to work. Otherwise, you end up like China with the empty cities, because then there's nothing there. So if there's no, whatever industry it is, or whatever thing that attracts people to want to live in that area, usually just putting up buildings doesn't work. You need some sort of economic activity tied to it. So, that would be
definitely, or like in China, where you have all of the cities built around the automotive industry, and you have so many, manufacturers, and the whole city, I think like more than 5 million people live in a city just because they are working in those companies, and that's it. They build a city around a couple of automotive companies they have.
Yeah, I think that'll be the challenge. I mean, I don't know the Saudi Arabia landscape that much. And also depends who they're building the city for, because how work works over there is a little bit different in terms of who does the jobs and where they live and what they do and sort of things like that. So I mean, it really, I guess, also will depend on that as well, because they use a lot of I guess expat workers for different activities. So I mean, it'll be hard. It's hard to tell. I don't know. We'll see. I'll try to be optimistic. We
have to follow. We have to follow country by country, and see how it develops. As we mentioned at the beginning, it's definitely not going to be the same for Saudi Arabia, for Canada, or Colombia.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So we're coming up on the hour, so I'm going to move to the fun questions. So, I don't know if you are a reader, so if you don't read, then what you're listening to, but is there a favorite book that you're reading or listening to, or podcast, I suppose?
I have been quite of a reader before I got my daughter. Now with my daughter and all of the work obligations, honestly, the only thing that I'm reading is a newsletter related to mobility segment and what is happening. So this is something that I receive on like weekly basis, and I really want to follow the industry and everything.
So what's a favorite book of the past then?
Favorite book of the past would be How to Win Friends and Influence People of Dale Carnegie.
Okay.
I think that this book really helped me a lot in one of the crucial stages and development of my career. When I was with Rimac Automobili, I started with a startup. We were all like almost like a family, spending so much time together, everybody. And then all of a sudden, company starts to grow exponentially, and you have 400 people. I'm chief operations officer, but I'm handling whatever is necessary. When I was leaving, they hired 5 people to replace my role. So it was something really broad that I was covering, from financial side, operational side, marketing, so logistic, many different segments. And I'm an introvert. And you can imagine now all of a sudden you're running a company with 400 people. Everybody is different. You're almost becoming like a corporation. So it's not like your small environment where you feel really comfortable and really safe. And I think this book allowed me to view on the relationship in a different way and to balance the relationship much better than what I was used to before. Because I'm somebody that was considered always like really strict and really, organized. Okay, we need to do this, and that. Let's do it. Let's do it quickly. And sometimes I would be even my mom and my husband is telling me like, why are you yelling? But for me, it's not yelling. I'm just like telling you to do certain things. It's really important. So I think this book really helped me to manage myself and to manage relationship in my life much better. Not only on a business level, but also on a private level.
That's great. So the next question, which usually doesn't work too well because we're all busy, but I have to add in a pop culture question because, I'm watching everything. So is there any shows that you're watching right now? Or because like you might not know any of the ones on my list here.
Honestly, no.
Okay.
No time for shows right now. I don't know what was.
Okay, that's perfect.
What was the last show? The last show that I have seen is what's the name of the one that was really popular? All of the Chinese were coming to Europe to see, and I know in Croatia to see the place where it was filmed. I cannot remember now the name. A Game of Thrones. I haven't seen it. Everybody watched it, and I haven't seen it. And I was like, really, like, why is everybody talking so much? But so many tourists were coming to Croatia to see, where it was filmed and all of the locations, and it became really popular locations where Game of Thrones were filmed. And I never watched it. So that was the last one that I watched, but that was when my daughter was not even 1, because at that point I still had some time because she was sleeping a lot. Now she's 3. I don't have time.
Well, they've moved on, so there's a new Game of Thrones series.
It's not called Game of Thrones, but it's something else. And I started to watch, but then I stopped because no time for me.
Yeah, it was very slow going. However, I had a follow-up question just in case you didn't have an answer for this one, because I'm fairly certain you'll have an answer for this. So what is your favorite robot movie? Past, present, coming out, doesn't matter. You can pick anything.
Can it be cartoon? WALL-E.
Well, I knew you were going to say WALL-E. It's on my list here. I'm like,
I love it.
I have a list here of movies, and I was just thinking, what movie will you pick? And so I was just trying to guess what you might pick. And so WALL-E was on my top.
I love also other ones, but WALL-E, I don't know I love it. It's so warm and so heartwarming. So and I have seen it multiple times, and I could see it multiple times again.
So I had WALL-E on the list, and then I also had Ex Machina. That's the one with the robot. So it's based on this AI game that the Silicon Valley geniuses came up with, I think.
Okay, I have to watch that one. I haven't seen it.
But the game is that someone plays an AI, and then you have the other characters. And the idea is that there's no point in putting the AI in a sandbox to develop it because it will always get out. And so the game is, when you play the AI, you can say, you can use whatever means necessary to get out of the box. And the AI always wins, like when they used to play this game. So they basically made a movie concept of this with a billionaire in the middle of nowhere in Costa Rica who built an intelligence and invited a young programmer to come. And the objective is for the AI to convince the programmer to help her escape, so to speak. But that's the general plot. I forget what the name of this game is, but it was in a book I read called Our Last Invention. But it's a very popular one if you're like into AI and you think that
I'm definitely gonna watch that out.
So that would be the serious one on my list, and then I had Wally on there. I just because like I know you're a mom, so I'm just like probably gonna be Wally.
But that one was even before I become a mom. That one is like, okay. I don't know. I like it.
No, that's cool. So is there, we're at the end here. So if there's anything you want to promote, you want to plug, your social handles, this is the time to do it.
So from the social handles, I think everything is on NAD Capital LinkedIn. We are quite active over there, pointing out, all of the companies in portfolio. What are they doing? What are they up to? What are the news? So this is the one to follow if you want to know more about what we are doing in NAD and what is new happening in general in the electric mobility sector, because we always like to keep track of the new developments and the new things happening.
Great. So thanks for doing this, and that we're out.
You can find information about the Candid Capital podcast on the website, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Episodes can be found on Spotify and other podcast platforms. A quick reminder that this is infotainment and is not intended to be professional advice, malicious, or hateful. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not represent those of employers, partners, and their subsequent connected private and public associations or organizations.
We candid, I hope you understand it. Your business growth, we planned it, yeah. This ain't for show, we stamped it, yeah. No FOMO, everyone come join, no solo. This all factual, from me to you, this Candid Capital.